Morning, everybody, and welcome to the TCPalm Editorial Board meeting to interview candidates for the Florida House District 82 race. I'm columnist Gil Smart, and I'm joined today by fellow editorial board members Larry Reisman, columnist and community editor, and Adam Neal, editor and news director. I will lead today's questioning. I'll open it up to the other board members at the end. Kelly Rogers, behind the scenes, is directing video coverage, and if we get questions from our social media audience, we might post one or two of those at the end of the session. I want to thank our candidates, John Snyder and Elisa Ackerly here for being prepared, being present here, completing the questionnaires ahead of time. Board members have reviewed those questionnaires, and you can find those questionnaires on tcpalm.com/elections, along with other stories, videos, and information about the upcoming November 3rd election. At the conclusion today, our editorial board members will discuss possibly writing an editorial to recommend a candidate in this race. We've got several questions. We might end up having more of a conversation than just a simple Q&A. Our goal is to be completed in 45 minutes to an hour at the most. Because of our time constraints, we're going to ask our candidates here to keep their answers concise and be respectful of others. We're going to start today's questioning with John, and then we'll go to Elisa, and then we'll have Elisa get the first crack at the next question. But the first question is about how COVID-19 has just so totally dominated the news cycle and totally dominated the political scene here for months now. This question is a two-part question, John. Number one, grade the state's response to the COVID-19 crisis, the state and Governor DeSantis. And number two, if elected, what would you do or what measures would you support in the House to help bring this crisis to a close?
Great question, Gil, and good morning, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I would give Governor DeSantis and the state of Florida an A for their handling of coronavirus. Obviously, there is always room for improvement. I think we live in a day and age where the Monday morning quarterback can tend to rule the day, but I think when you look at the totality of circumstances and how quickly things were changing day to day, even within the scientific community, the wide variety and the range of guidance that was given, I applaud Governor DeSantis for leading us through this pandemic here at the state level. He did a fantastic job at mobilizing our rapid testing facilities. He immediately locked down our assisted living facilities and nursing homes. And I think you can really look throughout the nation and see other states that were forcing COVID positive patients back into these facilities really had fatal consequences. Moving forward, one of my biggest priorities as a local business owner is working to immediately put a liability release in place for business owners. Our small business owners are the backbone of our economy, and living in a constant state of fear that they could be slapped with a lawsuit for something that there really is no guarantee where and how you contract this virus is something that is my number one priority as far as getting our economy back on track, is lifting that burden off of our small business owners.
Okay, good. Thanks, John. Elisa, how about you? Two things: grade the state's response, and number two, what would you do if elected to help bring this pandemic to a close?
Thank you. Thank you for letting me speak today. My response to COVID-19 and the governor, how he's handled it, I would give him a D. I have children who are in the school system, and how they've opened up the school system without instruction for guidance for the process to go smoothly. I have concerns about how all that's coming together, and the guidelines for the businesses should be a little more clear. And when I am elected, I will definitely work on guidelines and protocols so that everybody has a clear direction as to what to do and what's expected. And we all live in the community here, and I think that guidance is the way to go.
Okay, thanks. Second question, Elisa, you get first crack at this one. Discharges from Lake Okeechobee clean water is a perpetual issue in the 82nd district. What will you do if elected to help ensure that the discharges are kept to a minimum, if not ended, and that the health of our local waters can be improved?
When elected, I will definitely work with the federal agencies and the state agencies to make sure they're following mandates and protocols so that we can keep the algae bloom from coming through the C44 and C32, and making sure that we can put in some filtration systems. We need systems in place, the natural elements in the environment to do actually their job, to help process naturally, instead of everybody's just pointing fingers and saying we can't do everything, we can't do anything. I think there's a lot of things that we can do at the local level here to help with runoff and just get together as a community. I think everybody's been pointing fingers out west and east and saying, hey, it's somebody else's problem. But I think this is a community problem, and we need to address it. We need to address corporate, and we also need to be personally responsible for what's going on, and working together as a community. And I will do everything I can to be your voice in making sure that when we put legislation through, that the meat or the entity in the bill is not taken out. We need to make sure that it has some teeth, that we can make sure that the agencies who need to enforce things have the requirements that they need to be able to enforce. So I look forward to really actually getting something done. We've had a long time with everybody pointing fingers, and that's got to stop. We got to start doing stuff.
Okay, thanks. John, discharges, Lake Okeechobee, clean water. What do we do to facilitate clean water?
Gil, I don't think that there's an issue here as a Martin County resident that has dominated the airwaves, and rightfully so, more than the fight and the importance for the fight for clean water. When I grew up here and being born and raised in Martin County, it's a rite of passage, and at least it was for me, going out to the Environmental Studies Center, the second and third grade field trip, where you would go out into the lagoon, learn the St. Lucie shuffle, see the seagrass, and witness one of nature's most diverse biosystems, or ecosystems rather, in the entire world. And now when my own third grade daughter goes to do that same exact field trip, it's about a 10-sheet liability release form, and they sit around a wading pool and talk about what it's supposed to look like. So this is an extremely complex issue that really is going to require the comprehensive approach that we have seen starting to really work and take place as of late. We've got more things happening south of the lake, and I believe that there's universal agreement that in order to stop really the freshwater intrusion and the toxic runoff, is we've got to continue to be able to send the water south. We just had the president here in District 82 in Jupiter highlighting and extending the moratorium and the ban on offshore drilling, but really highlighting the important task at hand of continuing this push. This is something that, in order to be successful in the legislature, is going to require a network type approach where we have to seek input from our stakeholders on the west side of the lake, south of the lake, and an area that I believe does not get enough attention is really the runoff coming in north of the lake. So we can fix what we have here in Lake Okeechobee, but if there's going to be continual runoff from the Kissimmee River that has been so heavily dechannelized, we're never going to actually address the source of the pollutants that are entering the waterway. It's so following the science, working to be able to send the water south, paying close attention to properly funded septic to sewer conversions is all part of this problem that I look forward to rolling my sleeves up and getting right to work on.
Okay, very good. Thank you. John, you got first crack at this next question. Politico reported this week that Florida has some financial issues, predicting that it's possible the state will begin the budget year that begins July 2021 with a $2.7 billion budget shortfall. What should the state do about that? What would you do if elected to help close that gap?
Great question, Gil. I'm actually going to pull out right here within my bag something that I'm trying to really digest and come up with ideas is our long-range financial outlook that the House and Senate Joint Commission just released. And it is a very bleak picture. We know that our tourism has taken a tremendous hit, and that is a significant source of our revenues to the state budget. Thankfully, our real estate market has remained strong, but the biggest takeaway for me is that because of good fiscal conservatism, our state is in such better shape than so many others because of the reserves that we have worked so hard to save. So I do believe that between some of the federal CARES Act funding that's coming out, our strong reserves, we will, and I think it's important to note, and as a business owner, we have to be able to have tough conversations and be able to say that there will be budget cuts coming to just about every funded program within the state. And so it's going to be incumbent upon those agencies to really get the magnifying glass out, see where they can take that haircut, and we've got to tighten the belt buckle up so we can emerge through this, leaning on those reserves, and then work to begin restoring those right away. So again, I am thankful for the position that we're in right now, but it is going to be certainly tough waters to navigate, and something that I believe my business owner experience will pay dividends as we fight for those critical programs here in our local community, but also work to make sure we're not overextending ourselves into the red. We cannot afford to do that.
John, before I toss this to Elisa, one quick follow-up question. Should higher taxes be on the table at all?
Absolutely not. As a conservative Republican and someone who proudly signed the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, I vow to oppose and fight any attempt to raise taxes here in the state of Florida.
Okay, thanks. John, Elisa, state of Florida potentially facing a $2.7 billion budget shortfall for the budget year beginning 2021. What do we do? Is it going to all be accomplished through cuts? Might additional taxes be needed? How would you address this as a member of the House?
Really good question. And I think this question should have been actually addressed prior to COVID. COVID just has enhanced what's gone on with the system, what's wrong with it, the lack of preparing, the lack of planning. The planning should have been placed. I know they plan to have a shortfall, but the surplus, is just a little window that they have to possibly to use. But for me, I think if we look at expanding Medicaid and bringing in more jobs, that'll bring in more tax dollars and will provide more services to everybody in need. And definitely do not want to increase taxes. And we have to look at agricultural to see if there's some products that we can use to bring in some tax dollars. And we have to look at the long-term range for priorities in the government. There has not been a look at the long-term aspects and the long-term loopholes. There is the loopholes. We can close the corporate loophole tax that we have been funding and allowing corporations to use this, and they take jobs outside of the state of Florida. We want, if they get their corporate tax rate drops, we want to make sure that they keep the jobs here locally instead of taking jobs outside of the state of Florida. That's one of my priorities, to make sure that the loophole is closed for corporate business. And there's a lot of money at stake there, up to sometimes up to as 40% taxes that we are losing, and that income can be brought in to back here instead of allowing big corporations to take the jobs outside of the state of Florida. And there's a lot of things that are going on now that we could stop and enhance and keep jobs and balance, have our priorities in order. In education, there is some waste going on in education with the charter schools. We have nonprofits who are overseeing nonprofits, and there's a percentage, they get a percentage of the income coming in, and we're already paying for that already in the public school system. So it seems like there's a lot of waste going on and nobody's looking into it right now. And it doesn't make sense when we're talking about shortfalls and the waste that's going on right now. We just need somebody to really take a look at it. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Elisa. We'll stick with you for the next question. Police reform is a hot topic for obvious reasons. What can the Florida legislature do to foster police reform in Florida that would help local law enforcement agencies, for example, establish better relationships with their communities, to prevent the type of situations that has led to widespread discontent and protests in other states? What would you do as a member of the legislature to push police reforms, and what specific reforms do you think are necessary?
Oh, wow, that is a very good question. Absolutely do not want to defund the police. We need the police department. They provide a connective service to what makes us our community. We need training. We need training officers. We need social workers to evaluate the stress from the job. We have to make sure that they are not bring in their personal opinions or personal beliefs to the job, so that everybody can, be hired with the proper training. We need to look at the socioeconomics of the people who are at the top of the agency, so that we can make sure that everybody understands everybody's culture and not just their culture. They bring in the leaders at the top represent the entire system. So we have to make sure that people at the top have a diverse cultural background and understand that it is an entire community here and not just where their backgrounds are from. We need to make sure that everybody is represented in the training. So I really think training and mental health has to be brought up in the system.
Okay, good. John, police reform, what should we do?
I'll tell you, Gil, I personally believe that there is a very dangerous narrative that is sweeping our entire nation right now, and that is one where the media, and certainly not TCPalm, but certain branches of the mainstream media have began to paint law enforcement as part of the ails of our society. And there are a few issues where I get as passionate about than law enforcement, as someone who grew up under the roof of a dedicated public servant in law enforcement, the brother of a St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office deputy. I've seen firsthand, I've been at the Thanksgiving dinner table and seen my own family members get called out to some of the crime scenes that would really make your stomach turn. And I'm a firm believer that we can always do better. Continual process improvement is something that we should strive for daily. But I honor our law enforcement, the men and women who wear the badge. I honor and salute our fire and EMS who answer the call daily. And I would agree with the first part of Ms. Ackerly's statement that to defund the police or to make any innuendo of that call would be catastrophic for our society. And I do believe that the answer is, in fact, more funding where we can, to provide that opportunity for additional training, to help to recruit and retain top talent. That is going to be the answer. And I believe if you look around here in our own community, whether it's the Stewart Police Department, Martin County Sheriff's Office, Jupiter PD, Tequesta PD, every single one of those offices have a community policing entity. And when you go into to some of the neighborhoods and into the community here locally, the praise and the admiration that you hear for those units and for those relationships that have been built, that is going to be the answer moving forward, is how do we take best practices where they're working and help to share that with other offices and agencies around the state.
Okay. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. We're going to stick with you here for the next question. I want to talk about Amendment 3. It's a proposal that would scrap the existing closed primary system for legislative races in state offices, including governor. If passed, primaries would be open to all voters, and the top candidates, regardless of party, would advance to the general election. This is something that in Martin County we've had issues with, and in fact we've editorialized about because we've seen primaries closed by sort of phantom candidates, which seems to be part of the rationale behind this. But a lot of people in the state are now lining up against Amendment 3. What's your position on Amendment 3?
I vehemently oppose it, Gil. I don't think it's a good idea for the state and for our local communities. Listen, as someone who just came out of a bruising primary, I certainly understand the importance and the value of candidates from within a party going to the marketplace. Competition does make it a healthier environment, and having that arena to be able to put forth the ideas, earn the nomination of the party, and be able to represent them in the general election is a foundation of our political process long before I got here. And I do think when you look around the country, it is working, and it is something that we need to preserve and keep in place.
Okay, thanks. Elisa, Amendment 3, what do you think?
I think that the system that we have in place right now is working. It allows for each party to support a candidate. I think we all have the same. We want the same things. We want good schools. We want a safe place to be. We want clean water. What we diverse in is how to get there, and our core values, what makes a community. And I think if we go and have one entity who might be stronger in an area to be able to mandate what our options are, could be very detrimental. I think having a diverse economy and elected official is paramount. So I am definitely like the way things are right now.
Okay, thanks. Elisa, we'll stick with you for the next question here. Early this year, when the COVID crisis hit and unemployment spiked, Florida became almost sort of a national punchline in terms of the number of people applying for benefits, but they were unable to get on the website. They were unable to, the applications weren't being processed, that sort of thing. Obviously, the unemployment situation has eased a bit, and we all hope it will continue to do so. What must Florida do in the future to make sure that situation in terms of unemployment, in terms of getting benefits to people who need it, how do we fix that problem?
That's a good question, and I think that comes down to technology and use of the systems. I think we have the same thing going on when we have a hurricane, when you're trying to get information in, when you have lack of power or situations or section of the state who's under duress. COVID-19 just represented the entire state and how we lack, and how the organizational skills of the people at the top who were not prepared to follow through with anything that required mass input or mass demand. And I think it also represented the lack of care for everybody in the community. I think that we just need to rebuild the entire system. We need to use technology-based new technology that's coming in, and also have a backup system set up so that when a system gets overloaded, if you want to use the manual way of getting information out is in place. And when you lose power, we lose all technology now. For an instance, when we have a hurricane, we don't have a backup plan in order to make the system work. You can make where everybody's got to have generators so that we can get temporary power to the entity. But what do we do when we have COVID and the entire system is down? So I think the administration has shown their lack of leadership, and we need a whole new revamping of the system.
Okay, thank you. John, the unemployment situation, the unemployment debacle. How do we make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah, Gil, this is one of those 1 in 100, hopefully, and we pray 1 in a 100-year event. And my heart truly goes out to the thousands of and hundreds of thousands of people throughout the state that, to no fault of their own, found themselves unemployed. I think before we start, again, getting out the Monday morning quarterback, it's important to look at what went wrong within the system so we can truly get to work on making it better so this doesn't happen again. Here in Florida, we do have an unemployment system that is designed to get people back to work. And pre-COVID, when we're dealing with somewhere between a 3 to 5% unemployment rate, you want a system that incentivizes individuals to go out, seek employment, and as a fiscal conservative and a free market capitalist, I'm a firm believer that the individual with the proper motivation and the proper tools will do far more good and much better for themselves than what a government handout will provide. And so looking forward to the future, I'm a big believer, and just actually had a conversation with just a think tank about this process moving forward. We've got to get to a place where we're using smart forms. As someone who's in the employment and staffing industry, there are tools out there where the W-4 form or an I-9, which are very complex to the average end user, when put in the proper system, there should be clear steps to be able to get that filled out. Once you put your Social Security in one place, it should auto-populate throughout the rest of the field. And so I'm a firm believer that this is a great opportunity to turn this contract either back to the original producer who made it a certain way, and if told to do it differently, probably would have done differently, but they made what was given to them by the state. But let's look at this and figure out how do we make it more intuitive, more seamless, get the money required to keep the lights on and food on the table, but also make sure that there are proper tools to incentivize that job seeker to get back into the workforce as soon and as quickly as possible.
Okay, very good. Thanks, John. We'll stick with you on this one. While the COVID-19 crisis has overshadowed many of the other issues facing public education in Florida, those issues remain. From your perspective, what are the greatest needs? What does Florida need to do to bolster its public education system and make sure that we're turning out the kind of students and graduates that the state needs for a solid economic future?
Great question, Gil. And in talking to teachers throughout here in Martin County and throughout the state, one of the continual themes that I hear is let me teach. We've gotten to a point, and thankfully Governor DeSantis has taken some very bold and decisive action to repeal Common Core. And part of getting our education standard back up to top 5 is really untying the hands of our educators. They're there to train the hearts and minds, and we've gotten to a point where they're stuck to teaching to the test. Secondly, I would propose on day one a move to eliminate the teacher certification, or what I call the teacher tax. This has nothing to do with background checks and fingerprinting and making sure that we have FBI level 2 cleared individuals in the classroom, but you talk to any teacher out there, and every 3 years are having to pay hundreds of dollars retesting on material that do not even pertain necessarily to their subject matter. We need to eliminate the teacher tax so it's easier for top talent to get inside the classroom and stay in the classroom. And again, I point to Governor DeSantis, a record increase for new teachers coming into the classroom. And there's a common misconception that it stops with the new teachers, but that's just simply not true. And so we've got to, I would echo Governor DeSantis in that we've got to get Florida from a teacher salary perspective into the top 5 of the nation, not the bottom half. And the last thing I would share is making sure that our curriculum heavily focuses on explicit phonics. Our reading levels, Gil and the rest of the team, it's important to note that the prison planners actually start looking at the 3rd grade reading levels to determine what the future prison population is. There are few things more tied together than the trajectory of an individual's outcome than their reading level. And so to be in the bottom 1/3 of the country, in my opinion, is completely unacceptable. Again, that's not to point the finger at our school districts or our teachers, but to make sure that we really are looking and saying, do sight words work? Are we coming up with new tools to try and teach some of these basic fundamentals that are getting away from the tried and true and proven methodologies? And so more than anything, we've got to get our reading scores back up to top line.
Okay, very good, John. Thanks. Elisa, education reform. What do we need? What are you going to do?
Oh, please don't get me started on education. This is something I'm very passionate about. One, with the public school system, they have the ideology that you have one way to teach all. I disagree with that. I think that we need to focus on how children learn, why we're teaching them. I do not agree with the way the system is, especially in the charter school system, where they don't focus on quality education for the teachers. There is a better way than just standardized testing for the teachers. We can look at some new technologies. We have children that learn at we have visual learners, we have all the different ways that children learn. And then when you incorporate them together, they can pick up and learn faster. I know we've worked in the school system exploring all the different options, and need to get back to working one-on-one with the children instead of trying to just get them through the system. It's not working right now, and learner, everything is easier for you. If you're a slow learner, then the system tends to filter through. There's not enough need there for you in place so that you can be brought up to speed if you want to use the one way of teaching. And I think that teaching to test students is helping them when they work their way into secondary education. And there's just so much we can do. And it's such an important topic to be able to just put it under one category. I do think testing is a way to gauge where a child is. I don't think the test methods that they are using in the past have always shown a good way of gauging where a child's at, because the environment where a child is coming from needs to be addressed. The mental health part of what goes on outside the classroom as to how it's going to be brought into the classroom, and extenuating circumstances for how we move forward when somebody has going through something very traumatic, and how do we help them make a difference. So in the educational process, because that's what we're trying to teach them, how to become better learners, how to tackle problems. It's not just, are we going to, can you read, can you write? Yes, those are all very, very important, but it's how we are working as a community and teaching these skills that they need for problem solving. And it really needs to be addressed in a different manner. And I could see the whole system needs a really hard look. It's a really complex situation, and I don't think there's just one answer. I think it's a community effort, and I would like to see us do better. There's just not a one answer for a fit-all everything. I do think there's accountability in the public school system that is unmatched anywhere. Some of the private schools offer alternatives, and I don't think the charter schools, the way the system is set up, addresses how we as a community can do better. I think there's some waste as far as funding goes and how it's managed. I think when you look at the importance of what they're actually there for and where the money is being spent, we've got a long way to go, and there's no quick fixes. So,
okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. All right, Elisa, we'll start with this with you on this one. This is less of a policy question than it is a personal question. Can you talk about a time that you faced in your personal life or professional life an ethical decision? You were sort of faced with a conundrum. Tell us about the situation and tell us how you resolved it.
Oh, wow. Well, there's a couple of things that I had to deal with that really, was really moving and changing. One, when we live on a horse farm and when we have to call the vet out for extenuating circumstances, is to make the decision if this is the right thing for the animal, if it's, the right path to go. It's very emotional for me to be able to have to make that decision for an animal to, be put down or to work in a better manner. If there's viable options and having to work with the vets, it's very moving and life-changing, and it's not easy. The other thing that changed my life was when we had me and my husband, we went into a business and put money down to have the manufacturer build a house for us. And the manufacturer took our money and filed for bankruptcy. So we had to figure out what our resources were and what to do, and why was the system in place to allow this to happen. So we had to really work with the governmental agencies to deal with all the ethical and the business practices that were viable here in the state. I had worked my way all the way up to Governor Bush at the time to talk about policies and what we could do different. And there was a lot that we could do. So I had to make some really hard decisions as to, do we just accept it, or do we fight, or do we try to make change? And of course, we didn't have the money. We just had to, pull up our bootstraps and, decide, is this ethical for them to be able to have these business practices, to be able to file for bankruptcy, to change our lives, impact everything. We had to uproot and move, and we had to fight. So I had to go all the way to Tallahassee to make change. But it was a decision that I made. And the fellow ended up going to jail, but it was a long, hard route. And we had to learn how to work the system, work with the different agencies, and find out, was it the right thing to do? I think so.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. John, tell us about a time you faced an ethical dilemma and how you resolved it.
Good. It's a great question, Gil. And it's one of those where it's hard to point out a specific example and say, well, here's what happened, and here's how I made the right decision, and good on me. I think that character and integrity is what do you do when no one is looking? And I think that every single day we face that opportunity. What kind of person do we want to be? How are we going to handle certain things that come our way? And I'll just share with you the guiding philosophy that leads me, and as someone who is a big believer in my faith, in my family, and that is, again, do the right thing when no one is looking. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And I think that is something that we all need to strive for in our day-to-day. And that's really just some of the insight to how I handle some of those tough decisions. Again, thinking through, it's hard to point out one specific glaring example, but I think what's more important than in those big instances is what are you doing in the little decisions that lead up to that? Because if you're making those consistently at the low level, when it does come time for those big crunch time decisions, it really should be a no-brainer. You do the right thing regardless of who's looking.
Okay, good. Thanks. I want to throw it open now to our board members, Larry and Adam. If you have any questions, feel free. No? Okay. All right, let's wrap it up here. So I want to give each of you, and I'll start with John here, an opportunity to, if there's something that we didn't cover that you wanted to talk about, or if you just want to sort of do a closing statement, that's fine. But John, what do you got?
Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. And this is really what makes America so special, is the democratic process where we choose who our voice will be in representative government. As someone who was born and raised here in Martin County, I think it's timely that we look at the calendar and say, here we are, 19 years ago was the last normal day that we experienced as Americans, because in about 24 hours, we'll be at the 19-year mark where we watched the second tower crumble and our world fundamentally changed. And it was in that moment where I felt the burning desire to say, I've got to no longer sit on the sidelines. I will be joining the armed forces. And shortly after graduating high school, I had the honor and the privilege of serving our great nation for 5 years in the United States Marine Corps, and it was the highlight of my life. I am married to my wife, Brittany. We just had our 12-year anniversary. Our daughter, Elizabeth, is 9 years old, and we, believe it or not, are expecting our second child here any day. So if you see me looking at my text messages, that's waiting to see if it's time to head to the hospital. We're having girl number 2. And when I look at my daughter who's here walking with us and the other one in the womb, it's more apparent now than ever that really the heart of America is at stake. Are we going to become a socialist society, or are we going to stand strong for free market capitalism? Are we going to let the angry mob rule the day and set the tone for our nation, or are we going to make sure that public safety prevails? Are we going to slide down the cliff of government handouts and become like some of our other states to the north and west of us, or are we going to stay true to our fiscal conservatism and ride this thing out? Are we going to turn to the government to bring us the answers to this pandemic we face, or are we going to trust our small business owners and the innovators in our community to lead us through this? And I believe on all fronts, now is the time for bold conservative leadership, committed leadership. I look forward and would kindly and humbly ask those that are watching this either live or later on a broadcast, I would be honored to earn your vote and represent District 82, which again, for those that are watching, the southern portion of Martin County, northern portion of Palm Beach, and hope to be your voice in Tallahassee and stand strong for our conservative values and be a voice that will make all citizens of District 82 proud to have John Snyder as their state representative for District 82.
Okay, very good. Thank you, John. Elisa.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry. I appreciate the opportunity here. It's a great honor to be able to be on the ballot, marking the 100-year anniversary for women's rights. I think I would like to be a part of ratifying the Equal Rights Amendment. We need to at least get Florida on board with the equal rights and being one of the states to say, hey, equal rights for all. I'm humbled by being on the ballot. What I want everybody to understand that if you don't go to college, don't go to a university, they are still viable options. You can make a difference. You can become a whatever you want to be. Any little girl who wants to sit and say, hey, I have an opportunity. You will here in America. You don't have to listen to the corporate America saying you have to do it this way. There are other options out there, and it takes a community to make a difference. People are unrest right now because they're not happy with the things the way they're going. They're saying, I am not being represented here. I am wanting to be your choice for District 82. You can be whatever you want to be. What I'm going to offer you is hope, guidance. We have federal laws, federal agencies in place. We have state agencies in place. We can get them all to work together the way they're supposed to. Instead of fighting against everybody, we can have hope again. I get humbled to realize that being a part of something so powerful, and our one thing that we have is our vote to speak. Everybody says, at least you hear, my vote doesn't count. I said, your vote counts. When you sit down and decide you're going to start a family. And by the way, congratulations, John, on bringing a new family member into the world. That's an amazing experience. One of my most meaningful experiences.
Thank you.
It's life-changing. And you think you're a parent when you have one child, but you soon realize having two, it becomes a whole nother avenue, a whole bunch of joys. But what it does is the family unit to realize that you have two people come together. They have different values, but they instead of fighting with each other, they realize that they have to, they come with two separate values and they bring it together as a whole, make changes, make compromises, get the tools that it takes in order to be successful with a unit. And that's what I'm trying to express to everybody here, is that we all want the same things. We all want the good schools, safe. What we differ is our way to get there. And nobody wants to defund anything. What we want to do is make it better. And we've had 30 years in this district of things going the way they're going. We've got people in the streets that are unrest and saying it hasn't been represented. Well, it's time to be represented. I'm giving you an option. I've worked through the system. I understand how government works. I've sat on budget committees. I know finance. I've had to work with my own finance situation when FRS was stripped in 2009, when FRS, 2011, when FRS was stripped, we had to make a budgetary requirements in my own family. How do we still maintain what we want, what we need? I had to make the decisions as a family member to not buy the new vehicle, not spend the money, but we still had to make sacrifices, still maintain. We still had to pay. We still had to. So I'm letting you know I've got the skills to be successful. You don't have to go to a university. You can make it. Dreams do come true. And my husband is a first responder, and we've had to deal with COVID, all the changes that we go through, kids in the school system. So I want to ask for your vote. give you options, and we'll work really hard for you in Tallahassee. There is nobody who's going to work harder. I've had to fight for everything we've ever gotten, and I'm like a pit bull. I don't give up. So you've got a problem. You need somebody to represent you. I'm your avatar. So look forward to meeting everybody, and thank you. It's been a great ride.
Okay, very good. I want to thank our candidates, John Snyder and Elisa Ackerly, for being here today. Great interview. I want to thank all our viewers here. If you're on Facebook and watching this and missed part of it, you can go back and watch from the beginning. We have another live interview coming up with candidates in District 84 in just a few minutes. So thank you, everybody, for being here, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Have a great day.